I would like to next cover odometer disclosure and odometer fraud. As a licensed motor vehicle dealer, you're going to need to be aware of odometer disclosure, odometer fraud, and how to protect yourself against odometer fraud. I'm assuming that a large majority of your vehicles that you purchase to resell will have an odometer, unless you're exclusively selling trailers or towed RVs, etc. But I assume that you will more than likely be selling vehicles with odometers, so you will need to be aware of how to disclose odometer information correctly and how to identify and protect yourself against odometer fraud. I'm going to recommend to always disclose odometer information, even if the vehicle is exempt from odometer disclosure. I always recommend taking a look at the odometer, make it a record of the odometer reading by entering the current odometer reading on the title or the title registration, or enter it into your dealer software program that you may be using to complete all the deal paperwork for you. Understanding dealer odometer disclosure. Ensuring transparency and compliance in the realm of buying and selling motor vehicles is absolutely crucial. One critical aspect of this transparency is the disclosure of odometer readings, particularly when dealing with vehicles sold by your dealership. Odometer disclosure laws exist to protect consumers and dealers from odometer fraud, ensuring the mileage displayed on the vehicle accurately represents the actual usage history. I want to delve into the significance of dealer odometer disclosure, its legal requirements, and its implications for both dealers and buyers. So why does odometer disclosure matter? The odometer of a vehicle serves as a really crucial indicator of the vehicle's wear and tear. It's going to affect its market value and the vehicle's reliability. Accurate mileage disclosure does allow your customers to make informed and conformed decisions about a vehicle's condition and its potential future maintenance costs. It prevents sellers from misrepresenting a vehicle's history to inflate its perceived value or to deceive potential buyers. Legal framework and requirements. The Federal Odometer Act mandates odometer disclosure for vehicles, and this law requires sellers, including dealerships, to provide a written disclosure of the vehicle's mileage at the time of the sale. This disclosure must be signed by both the buyer and the seller, affirming the accuracy of the odometer reading. Additionally, the state does have its own regulations that further specify requirements for odometer disclosures. The state law outlines specific penalties for dealerships that fail to comply, including fines and potential legal repercussions. So what are the dealer responsibilities? Dealerships have a real duty to ensure that odometer disclosures are accurate and truthful. This responsibility extends to verifying the mileage of vehicles that you acquire through trade-ins, or maybe you've acquired at dealer auctions, or the vehicles that you purchase directly from customers. Any discrepancies or alterations in odometer readings must be reported to the buyer before completing the sale. And I want to repeat that very important statement. Any discrepancies or alterations in odometer readings must be reported to the buyer before completing the sales transaction. Moreover, dealerships must maintain records of odometer disclosures for a specific period as mandated by federal and state law. These records serve as proof of compliance, and they can be audited by regulatory authorities if needed. Here's the implications for the customer. For your customers, dealer odometer disclosures provide peace of mind and confidence in the accuracy of a vehicle's mileage. It allows them to assess that vehicle's value accurately and anticipate potential future maintenance needs based on the mileage history. In cases where odometer fraud is suspected or discovered after the purchase, then buyers do have legal recourse to seek compensation and can hold the dealer accountable if the disclosure was not made at the time of the sale. So ensuring compliance and preventing fraud is definitely necessary. To uphold transparency and prevent fraud, dealers should implement a real robust procedure for odometer disclosure and compliance. And this includes training your staff, if you do have employees, on the legal requirements of odometer disclosure. You're going to need to maintain accurate records and conduct thorough inspections of vehicles' odometers before the sale. Dealer odometer disclosure really plays an important role in fostering trust and transparency in the automotive marketplace. By adhering to legal requirements and ethical practices, dealerships need to uphold their commitment to integrity and consumer protection. Buyers are also going to benefit from accurate mileage information, enabling them to make informed decisions, and it also helps safeguard against fraudulent practices. Ultimately, dealer odometer disclosure is not just a legal obligation, but it's really a cornerstone of the ethical operation of your dealership. There are basically two different levels of compliance when it comes to odometer law. You have federal odometer laws and the state odometer laws. State law usually mirrors federal odometer law, so the state law tends to add penalties in addition to the federal penalties. And in a moment, I will go in depth into federal odometer law, but first, I want to show you how to comply with odometer law, and then I want to show you how to protect yourself from odometer fraud. Federal and state law requires you report the mileage of any vehicle sold at the time of the sale of the vehicle, unless that vehicle is exempt. Now, you have a couple of options here on how to comply with odometer disclosure. The first option is entering the odometer reading on the back of the title, like you see right here. Just read the odometer on the vehicle and enter the odometer on the back of the title, whether you have a vehicle that's titled by the state or possibly by another state. Be sure to record it correctly when you're buying the vehicle. And if you've been driving the vehicles or allowing customers to test drive it, then it will have more miles when you resell it. So be sure to put accurate odometer information on the title when selling the vehicle as well. So you're going to enter that odometer reading when you purchase the vehicle, and then be sure to enter the updated odometer reading when you're reselling the vehicle. You can also enter that odometer reading in any software program that you're using when you're completing a deal. And I will cover dealer management software in depth later on in your dealer training course. You can also record the odometer reading on a title application like you see right here. Now, the state's title application can be downloaded from different dealer management software programs when you've completed the deal. I want you to be aware that you must state the mileage at the time of the sale, and that's going to be required under state and federal odometer records unless there's an exemption. And these records must be kept for 5 years. That is a federal law. All odometer disclosure records have to be kept a minimum of 5 years. Now, mileage disclosure is not going to be required for like heavy trucks or vehicles with a gross vehicle rating of more than 16,000 pounds or trailers or most vehicles that are 20 years old or older. Dealers must record mileage registered on the odometer at the time of the vehicle transfer unless that vehicle is exempt. I want to repeat this very important statement. Dealers must record mileage registered on the odometer at the time of the vehicle transfer unless that vehicle is exempt. So let's talk about some odometer disclosure exemptions. Vehicles with a gross vehicle weight rating of more than 16,000 pounds are going to be exempt. And this would apply to heavy vehicles such as semi-trucks, things like that. However, there could be a separate Federal Department of Transportation form that must be completed to verify the information on those vehicles. A vehicle that is not self-propelled will be exempt, such as a trailer or like a pull-behind RV. 2010 or older model vehicle years normally have a 10-year exemption. 2011 or newer model vehicle years usually have a 20-year exemption, and I will explain those two in just a moment. Odometer discrepancies are never exempt and must be reported. A few years ago, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration changed the odometer exemption law. It's very important for you to be aware of this. In the past, any vehicle that was 10 years of age or older was exempt from odometer disclosure. Well, they have changed that law. So now, a vehicle that's 2011 or newer does not become exempt until it's 20 years old. So let's take a look at this chart, which I think will easily explain this newer requirement. As you can see here, a 2008 model year vehicle had a 10-year exemption. So a 2008 vehicle became exempt from odometer disclosure in January of 2018 when it became 10 years old. A 2009 vehicle also had a 10-year exemption, so it became exempt from odometer disclosure in January of 2019 when it was 10 years old. A 2010 vehicle became exempt from odometer disclosure when it was 10 years old in January of 2020. Now, this is where the law has changed. Now, a vehicle that's 2011 or newer does not become exempt from odometer disclosure until it's 20 years old. So, A 2011 model year vehicle will not become exempt until January of 2031. A 2012 vehicle does not become exempt until January of 2032 when it's 20 years old. See how that works? A 2013 vehicle will not become exempt until January of 2033. So one thing that has not changed, however, is the reporting of what is called an odometer discrepancy. An odometer discrepancy is when you are, in fact, aware that the odometer is actually incorrect. If you are buying a vehicle with an incorrect odometer, you must disclose that information on this form that I want to show you right here. This is a standard odometer disclosure statement, and any that you use will look very similar to this odometer disclosure statement that's normally generated by any dealer management software program that you might be using. I want to show you how to complete this form. So let's go ahead and magnify it here. First, you want to enter the name and the mileage, the name of your customer and the mileage. And I want to bring to your attention these two boxes that you see right here. Sometimes you may acquire a vehicle that you cannot find the exact mileage for, or the true mileage may be unknown. Maybe you have a vehicle that has a dash, an LED dash, and the dash is no longer working and you cannot verify the mileage. Or maybe you have one of those older vehicles that might have a mechanical odometer, and that mechanical odometer might read 23,000 miles, but you're fairly certain that that odometer has rolled over and it has 123,000 miles or 223,000 miles if the odometer has rolled over. If the age of the vehicle makes it hard to verify that odometer, then you want to check box number 1 that states the mileage is in excess of mechanical limits. This discloses to the customer that you are actually unable to verify the true mileage of the vehicle, possibly due to the age of the vehicle or other circumstances. Incorrect odometers must be disclosed regardless of the age of the vehicle. You must verify that a vehicle that has an incorrect odometer has been disclosed in writing. Now, I want you to be aware, many times when you're purchasing a vehicle to resell, the odometer on the vehicle could be incorrect. And there's no age limit on this. So for example, you might be purchasing, say for example, a 1970 Chevy Nova from some guy, and he tells you the odometer stopped working, and it used to read 80,000 miles, so he replaced the odometer with a new odometer in that dash that now reads 30,000 miles. Well, this is known as an odometer discrepancy. And the state, along with the federal government, does require that you report incorrect odometers, so the next buying customer will be aware that that vehicle that they are purchasing has an incorrect odometer. So here you can see on this odometer disclosure statement, you would instead check box number 2 that says warning odometer discrepancy. So this gives written disclosure and warns the customer that the odometer to the vehicle that you're selling is actually incorrect. I would recommend attaching this disclosure statement directly to the title, so no matter whom's looking at the title, perhaps an interested customer, they're going to see the attached odometer disclosure statement disclosing that incorrect odometer. Federal law does require odometer disclosure statements to be kept for a minimum of 5 years. And as a reminder, you will never have too much paperwork. And I also want to remind you that odometer disclosure statements must be signed not only by the customer, but also by you as the dealer. And most standard odometer disclosures forms will require that the customer signs stating that they have received a copy. So remember, you're never going to have too much paperwork. You're going to make 2 copies of everything. One goes to the customer and one's going to go into your records, which we're going to refer to as the deal jacket. So normally your customer must sign this document stating that you have given them a copy as well. So do attach that and keep it in the records for at least 5 years. Now let's talk about odometer fraud. A vehicle's odometer reading is a major factor in determining how much the vehicle is worth. Any odometer can easily be rolled back in a fraudulent effort to increase the value of the vehicle. And by the way, that is illegal on a federal level, and it's illegal in all states. Older vehicles with mechanical odometers are vulnerable because fraudsters have used various techniques, including disassembling and reassembling the odometer to manually adjust the mileage on an older vehicle. In the old days, a very unscrupulous dealer would take a trade-in and they would hook up a drill to the odometer cable and they'd roll the odometer back. And this was a trick that was used by hundreds, if not thousands, of old school dealers in an attempt to get more money for their vehicles. And it was illegal then, and it's illegal now. Digital odometers, like the one you see here, that have been tampered with are even harder to detect than traditional mechanical odometers since they have no visible moving parts. Today's digital odometers are actually easier to change than the old mechanical odometers. Now, odometer fraud has become much more high-tech in nature, and there are several illegal software programs that will allow you to hook up one of those diagnostic code readers, those vehicle diagnostic scanners you hook up behind the steering wheel to, change O2 sensors and things like that. Well, you can use one of those, and many of those programs will easily allow you to change the digital readout of the odometer on the dash. Digital odometers can also be rolled back by removing the vehicle's circuit board to change the odometer reading as well, or using rollback equipment that hooks right into the vehicle's electronic system. Modern vehicles equipped with digital odometers are not immune to odometer fraud because there are some sophisticated software and tools that enable fraudsters to tamper with electronic mileage, and often they leave no visible signs of interference whatsoever. I want you to be aware the mileage on most modern vehicles is tracked via both the physical odometer on the dash and the control module in the vehicle's computer. The control module does not control the number displayed on the dash. In some cases of fraud, the number visible on the dash could be altered while the control module still holds the actual mileage. So checking the module can be done on most vehicle diagnostic scanners. So you can actually purchase a vehicle diagnostic reader for as little as $50. Odometer tampering to misrepresent a vehicle's condition is a crime. So you always want to report that to the state's law enforcement agency. So resetting, disconnecting, or altering a vehicle's odometer to conceal the true mileage is illegal in every state and is a federal crime as well. Uncovering the truth about odometer fraud. So the illegal practice of rolling back a vehicle's mileage to increase its value continues to be a real issue in the dealership industry. This deceptive practice not only deceives unsuspecting buyers, but it also undermines the trust in the used motor vehicle dealer market. The statistics surrounding odometer fraud reveal a really troubling trend that affects countless consumers each year. So according to the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, odometer fraud affects hundreds of thousands of vehicles annually in the United States alone. They estimate as many as 1.4 million vehicles have altered odometers, and they also estimate that about 450,000 of these vehicles are sold every year with false odometer readings. So the monetary losses due to odometer fraud are very significant, and the NHTSA estimates that consumers in the United States lose over $1 billion annually as a result of purchasing vehicles with manipulated odometers. Odometer fraud is not confined to a particular region or even to the United States. It's a worldwide global issue affecting both developed and undeveloped nations when there is a market for used vehicles. Also, there's something you want to be aware of called title washing. In some cases, odometer fraudsters will transfer a vehicle's title between states or even countries to remove any indication of odometer discrepancies, which can actually make it harder for a dealer to detect odometer fraud. So consumer awareness and detection challenges. Detecting odometer fraud can be difficult, especially if that fraud is well executed. Some warning signs include unusually low mileage for a vehicle's age, or maybe a discrepancy in maintenance records, or even inconsistencies in the vehicle condition. Governments and regulatory bodies are increasingly taking steps to combat odometer fraud. Laws in the United States, such as the United States Federal Odometer Act, mandate disclosure of odometer readings, and they do impose strict penalties for tampering with an odometer. So organizations like Carfax and AutoCheck are going to offer vehicle history reports that can reveal odometer discrepancies and other potential histories. And later on in your dealer training course, we are going to cover vehicle history reports extensively. So you'll definitely be an expert on that before you complete the course. However, these reports are not foolproof, and they may not capture all instances of odometer fraud. Consumers who unknowingly purchase vehicles with rolled back odometers could face expensive repairs and reduced resale when the fraud is discovered. Inaccurate odometer readings can mislead buyers about a vehicle's true mileage and maintenance history and potentially compromise safety as well. And I do want you to be aware, victims of odometer fraud can seek legal recourse against the seller under consumer protection laws. I want to repeat that. Victims of odometer fraud can seek legal recourse against the seller under consumer protection laws, but proving fraud and recovering losses can be challenged. So, how do you, as a licensed motor vehicle dealer, protect yourself against odometer fraud when you are buying vehicles to resell? Well, there are actually several ways for you to do this. It can be difficult, but it's not impossible to detect whether a vehicle's odometer has been altered. Here's a list of some tips to help you as a used motor vehicle dealer to detect odometer frauds when you're purchasing vehicles to resell. So one thing you want to do is ask to see the title and compare it to the mileage on the vehicle's odometer. Be sure to examine that title closely, and if the mileage notation seems obscured or if it's not easy to read, that could be a red flag. So you want to compare the mileage on the odometer with the mileage indicated on the vehicle's maintenance or inspection records as well. So you can search for oil change stickers that might be on the window or the door frame. Sometimes those oil change or maintenance stickers might even be in the glove box or under the hood. You always want to make sure that there are no blank LEDs on an odometer or a mechanical odometer. You want to make sure those mechanical numbers aren't wiggling. Some vehicles that have had their odometer altered could have a blank space instead of a number on your digital readout odometer. Make sure to take a look at the tires. If the odometer on your vehicle you're thinking about purchasing shows 20,000 miles or less, it should have the original tire. So look at wear and tear on the vehicle, on the gas, brake, the clutch, the pedals. Be sure it seems consistent and appropriate for the number of miles that are actually displayed on the odometer. In my opinion, the absolute greatest way to find out if an odometer has been altered is by conducting a vehicle history report. Once again, we will cover those extensively later on in your dealer training course. When we cover vehicle history reports, you're going to see a page of the report like you see right here, and this shows the last recorded mileage on the vehicle, as you see right up here where that red arrow is. So that's going to show you the last recorded mileage on that vehicle. So say for example, if I'm taking a trade or maybe buying a vehicle from an individual, the very first thing that I'm going to do is take a look at the mileage on the odometer. And as you can see here, the specific on this specific vehicle, let's say, for example, the last time the mileage on this vehicle was recorded at 2,259, but I'm reading the odometer on the actual vehicle and it says 900 miles. Well, there's a discrepancy there. So, or let's say, for example, you look at the odometer and it reads 60,000 miles, but the last recorded mileage was like 120,000 miles. This is going to be a red flag. So this is going to show you what the latest odometer reading was. I would never, ever purchase a vehicle or take a trade-in that appears that has had the odometer lowered or appears that has had the odometer tampered with. So you can run a vehicle history report to check for odometer discrepancies in the vehicle's history. A vehicle's condition and a detailed history report are really the best clues that you're going to have as a licensed dealer to determine whether odometer fraud has occurred. Odometer fraud continues to be a prevalent issue when dealers are purchasing vehicles for their inventory, but with some awareness, some diligence, and some really informed decision-making, you, as a licensed motor vehicle dealer, can reduce the risk of falling victim to this deceptive practice. By conducting thorough research, inspecting vehicles carefully, and understanding legal protections, dealers can protect themselves financially and from safety risks associated with odometer fraud. Staying informed and vigilant is key to ensuring a safe and satisfactory purchase of used motor vehicles for your inventory. I really hope that you're finding this information very, very beneficial.